Hello, everyone. Welcome. Good to see everyone. We're going to give it a minute here as we're letting folks trickle in. A great way to spend your Thursday evening amongst a bunch of people who are pissed off and are ready to fight back. Thanks so much for joining us. Welcome to our free abortion on demand without apology call tonight. I'm so glad to see you here. We already have almost 200 folks trickling in, and we haven't even hit the first minute. We're really glad to have you here. Thank you for sharing your evening with DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America, the largest socialist organization in the US, during such an intense moment. I'm going to ask folks joining us via Zoom, or if you're joining us via Facebook, we are live streaming right now, to please drop your name, your first name, your chapter. If you're not in this DSA chapter, where you're tuning in from tonight, in the chat or in the comments. And while those introductions are being made, I am going to share a little bit about myself. So hello, everyone. My name is Christian Hernandez. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm streaming live from North Texas. I am currently serving my second term on the National Political Committee, the political leadership of DSA. And like you, I'm here because one, I was asked to be, and two, because I'm ready to fight back. Because this crisis, like the others that have come before, whether COVID, police violence, or evictions, can only be confronted by organization. And in a time when the American working class is, by design, incredibly disorganized, it can be incredibly demoralizing. Now, getting people on the streets comes with its own set of joy and frustration. We know mobilization is important, but it will not be enough. And we know we need to figure out how to make this known to people besides those already paying attention. And that, to me, is where I know it's important to be part of an organization, because those questions can't be answered alone. This fight goes beyond a person's right to choose. It goes beyond abortion even. This is yet another assault on our democracy, on our ability to have a say in our own lives. Because down the line, we see that with bans come criminalization, and with criminalization comes disenfranchisement. It's not enough to ban abortion. They're also allowing a shortage on baby formula, which many parents rely on to nurture their children. Not everyone can breastfeed, and those who can are often limited by the fact that we don't have paid parental leave in this country, by workplaces that don't offer union protections like breaks for pumping. Hell, my Republican governor here in Texas is already blaming this shortage on undocumented immigrants. The right is very quick to resort to division to hide the reality that we share the same enemies. But it's not just the far right. At this very moment, a Democrat in Texas, Henry Cuellar, is openly against abortion, the same guy who voted against the PRO Act, the right to organize in your workplace, and is also being supported by countless Democrats for re-election. The feigned helplessness of the Democratic Party shows that they will only give us the option to vote for them. Too often, they will accomplish too little while in office. The ruling class is coming for us in every possible terrain of struggle. It is both complex and yet incredibly simple when we take the time to connect the dots and are clear that the source of this is the capitalist class, those wealthy few who own our workplaces and our politicians. The good news is that the crisis of capitalism always presents opportunities for working class struggle, as long as we are bold enough to take them. In the words of Bell Hooks, it's time to make the complex clear so that we know not just why this fight matters, but how this fight shows up in our lives and how we fight back as a united class. Individually, we may feel overwhelmed and desperate, but together we can have hope. Hope is essential. And together we have an opportunity to change the course of history. So how do we do that? Well, I don't know. I wish it were that easy. But what I do know is that we have the opportunity to tie all of these struggles together, to build a mass left politics that supports a militant labor movement, that feeds into a robust abolitionist movement, to not only work against the increased militarization and funding of the police, but also to ensure that there are massive networks of care to keep us together while we build this better world, a world where democracy is real and felt and seen in every aspect of our lives, in our workplace, at the ballot box, and in our homes. And the first step, though, is to get involved, joining an organization and figuring it out together. To that end, I'm going to share a poll. We want to get a sense of who's on the call tonight. Are you in chapter leadership, an at-large member of DSA, or perhaps not yet in DSA? Let us know. This poll should be launching here in a couple seconds. Give us your answer. Let us know who's joining us. And in the meantime, one of our comrades is going to drop a link in the chat to our toolkit. Still a work in progress, but a helpful resource as we turn out to rallies across the country to meet the moment with all the rage that it deserves. Again, this toolkit is still under construction because we aren't only committing to mobilizations, but also developing a longer-term strategy in the fight for our lives. We want to make sure the toolkit is helpful not only to people in blue states, but those comrades fighting back in states like Texas or in areas where your chapter is still getting off the ground. The fight will look different depending on your local conditions, but the point is we want to support that work everywhere. We're also going to drop the link to our pledge page. Let us know you're committing to the fight. It's an opportunity to get others to do the same. And while we are in the midst of the recommitment drive in DSA, we also want DSA members to call our comrades whose dues are lapsed or expired, invite them out to a rally or to donate to your local fund. We know the attack on abortion rights matter to people, but we also know it matters that people participate. So make the asks. All right, well, enough for me. Thank you for participating in the poll if you have already. I'm going to get us going with our first speaker. Jenny Brown is an organizer with the National Women's Liberation Front and author of Birth Strike, The Hidden Fight Over Women's Work and Without Apology, The Abortion Struggle Now. Both her written work and decades as a radical feminist organizer demonstrate that the attack on women and reproductive rights is class warfare and successful strategies that we, the working class, can use to fight back and win. Over to you, Jenny.
Hi, it's great to be here and it's great to see everybody. Thanks so much for inviting me to speak. So I should open by saying that the ideas that I'm going to present are not mine alone. They're from two groups of feminist radicals, National Women's Liberation and the Red Stockings Archives for Action. Red Stockings was a key group in getting abortion legalized in New York State in 1970. So for decades, we've been told, you know, abortion is just this wedge issue. It's used by Republicans to split working class Catholics away from the Democratic Party, to excite an evangelical base. And according to this view, politicians and the 1% don't really care one way or the other about abortion. They're just using the issue to get votes. I think this explanation has frayed as we got more and more restrictions, and now it can be retired completely. And then birth control too, we can see is under attack. So that reveals that the stated goal of reducing abortion is really a ruse. And I think what we're looking at is that abortion is being wrongly classified as a cultural issue, when in fact, bearing and raising children and who's going to pay for it is a key economic battlefront. And as Christian said, it's a key front in the class war right now, and that's why we're seeing these attacks. So what's really going on? Establishment think tanks are really in a froth, and they have been for decades, about the US birth rate. It's the lowest it's ever been at 1.64 children per woman. That's considerably below replacement. And without immigration, the US population would start declining as it has in Japan. So occasionally you'll hear people talking about this openly, like in 2017, Paul Ryan, when he was House Speaker, made headlines for saying, oh, we need to have higher birth rates in this country. And that was as part of an attack on Social Security. But he was basically saying what establishment think tanks have been saying for decades. The New York Times, the Financial Times, the Wall Street Journal, all regularly warn that if birth rates continue to slide, the result will be economic stagnation and national decline. And then, of course, the racist versions have been busting through too. I remember in 2019, Florida Republican State Senator Dennis Baxley suggested that Alabama's abortion ban was good because it would encourage white births. Well, it's not surprising that fewer people are willing to have children because neoliberal austerity has undermined everything that makes working class life viable, right? But it does put the establishment in a bind if they want to increase the birth rate voluntarily, they would have to put in resources like universal childcare, paid parental leave, livable wages, and working hours. And they'd prefer to take away our reproductive liberties because it's a much cheaper way to boost the birth rate. In Texas, when there were all these restrictions put forth in 2011, 82 family planning clinics closed and childbearing rose 27% compared to the areas that still had birth control access. So you can kind of see what the coercive regime looks like. Coercion is not the only possible response to a birth slowdown. In Europe, generally, politicians have reacted by providing substantial paid parental leave, universal childcare, monthly payments to parents, ample sick leave, shorter work hours, and other things that we can only dream about. And of course, they already had national health care. So here, the expense of bearing and raising kids, the agenda is to push it back into the family. Workers in over 50 countries have 6 months or more of paid leave. And many of us here in the US aren't even covered by our stupid unpaid leave laws. And then our work hours are longer. So the decision to start a family is weighed down by childcare costs, lack of affordable housing, unreliable healthcare, overwork. And in my group, we call this a spontaneous birth strike. But right now, parents are blaming themselves when they can't make it work. Or if you want kids and you can't figure out how to make it work, you're blaming yourself. And this is why I think it's important to expose the anti-abortion right as the enforcement arm of an economic system that pushes the costs and burdens of child rearing onto families and relies on our unpaid labor. Now, I should say that lower birth rates are not a crisis for the 99%, but for the establishment, it is a real problem. Their profits and capitalist growth, economic growth in general, rely on a continually expanding workforce replenished with ever larger groups of young people to labor and consume and pay taxes and serve in the military. And they even openly discuss that if they want to get rid of Social Security, which as we know is on the agenda, people will have to have larger families than we're having now so that we can be forced to rely on our kids when we get too old to work. This was the regime before we had Social Security or any kind of retirement security. Immigration has compensated somewhat for our slumping birth rates in the United States. And employers privately discuss immigration as a way to dump the work and expense of raising the next generation onto mothers, families, and communities and nations that the immigrants leave behind. They even call immigrants instant adults, right? But then pro-immigration Republicans, the few of them that there are left, still worry that birth rates are dropping in sending countries such as Mexico. So they're openly talking about this, and it not usually in the really open way, but if you look carefully, you can see that they're discussing it. Immigration obviously carries its own liabilities for the employing class, right? Immigrants may organize, unionize, eventually vote. And that's why you see a lot of promotion of guest worker programs. The idea is you put workers in this no rights twilight zone where they can be deported should they annoy the boss by demanding their rights, and a whole group of workers who have no say in the society that they're living in. So if the birth rate is really the underlying issue, it's not a wonder that establishment Democrats are wimpy on abortion. Just like the rest of the ruling class, Democratic elites want to encourage a higher birth rate without additional public or corporate expenditure. And it was the fiasco of the Clintonite healthcare reform in 1993 that led a group of Black women to coin the term reproductive justice, which has since really, I think, opened up the abortion debate and understanding. And reproductive justice is pretty simple. We need the right not to have a child, we need the right to have a child, and the right to parent in safe and healthy environments. So we would be stronger in the abortion fight if we recognize that the battle is over our reproductive labor and how cheaply that work will be done. And with a fresh feminist angle showing how attacks on abortion rights and birth control access are about keeping our reproductive labor cheap, I think we have a chance to reach additional people. Many people have only been exposed to kind of a feminism of the 1%, which says, you know, any problems you have supporting and raising your kids are your personal responsibility. You know, after all, you had a choice, you know, lean in. But socialists and reproductive justice advocates insist, you know, we aren't dumb or brainwashed for having kids. It's important, difficult work that benefits the whole society. So you could say that abortion is our right to strike against untenable reproductive working conditions, and it's time to defend it on that basis rather than individual choice rhetoric that seems to be everywhere. So a couple of notes on where to go from here. Defy the laws publicly. First, let's remember we had 100 years of underground abortion and it didn't change the laws in our favor. Only when we made the fight public did it make a difference. So while it may feel more concrete to do underground efforts to provide abortions, you know, at least someone is able to get an abortion, by nature it's secret. So we need to also do open defiance of the law, you know, clog the courts and become ungovernable, essentially. The Florida chapter of my group, National Women's Liberation, started a pledge to aid and abet abortion, hashtag aid and abet abortion, in defiance of the Florida legislature, and we're going national with it. This is a strategy that we used to get the morning after pill over the counter. And in that case, we faxed our pledges to defy the law from every corner of the country to the FDA's office. We're going to do a similar thing with this. So if people want to sign on, it's at womensliberation.org. We need to attack the court and the Senate. Let's keep attacking the legitimacy of the Supreme Court and the Senate, which are two undemocratic bodies that are working in tandem to enforce class rule. The court says corporations can spend unlimited money, extends right to work through the public sector, or says states can ban abortion. And then the Senate, with its undemocratic makeup and the filibuster rule, means we don't have any way to respond to any of that with legislation. We need to keep up the fight to put the abortion pill over the counter. This is a fight within the Food and Drug Administration. We managed to get some of the red tape off the pills last December. So now in legal states, you can get pills in the mail, say from abortionondemand.org. But studies are showing that pills will be safe over the counter. So that's a strategy that we need to pursue. A lot of nonprofits, this is a great opportunity for the tens and thousands of people involved in these groups to get more radical. And I think for DSA, let's call them in rather than dismissing them, as I know has happened occasionally. And it has happened recently in Orlando, for example. And then finally, we need to win it through Medicare for all. This is why I think the DSA slogan is good: free abortion on demand without apology. And I would add, since Bernie just reintroduced Medicare for all, through a national health system, you know, one that is not administered by the states, but is federal like Medicare. So abortion has much more public support than it did in 1973. But through the decades, the bulk of organizing has focused on legal cases and lobbying. You know, with the apologetic, timid, respectable approach you would get if your main audience is funders, judges, and legislators rather than ordinary people. So those tactics have run their course. It's time to return to the tactics that won us abortion 50 years ago as part of the broad revolutionary demands of the women's liberation movement and the general freedom struggle. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Jenny. Jenny said we are not apologizing. We're not fucking apologizing in this fight. Thank you so much. If you haven't already, please take a moment to sign the pledge, share it on your social media. And in the meantime, I'm going to introduce our next speaker, a fellow Texan. Kim Varela-Broxson is a reproductive justice organizer in Austin, DSA, a nonprofit abortion worker, and an abortion fund volunteer with the Bridge Collective, a Texas practical support abortion fund. She has been a co-chair of her local DSA chapter and has been organizing in Texas reproductive justice for the last 6 years. So over to you, Kim.
Thanks so much, Christian. So absolutely double tapping everything Jenny said, which is not uncommon. Jenny has an excellent analysis in the history of what we've been going through. I'm here today to talk a little bit about sort of where we are right now, and to give you a little bit of information about what it's been like to be on the front lines of abortion in Texas. So like Jenny mentioned a few minutes ago, sort of this like framework of reproductive justice is really important to help guide our work. So the idea that we should be able, as working class people, to parent, to not parent, and to parent the families that we have in safe and sustainable communities. And through that framework, I really feel like we can really easily see how abortion is connected to all of these other fights that we're working on, whether it be economic justice, racial justice, immigration rights. And I'm hoping to touch on a lot of these things sort of throughout our conversation today. So the first thing I want to start with is something that a friend of mine always starts with, which is right now, today, abortion is still legal in all 50 states. If you need an abortion, there are people out there to help you get one. We will get you an abortion. It's fucking happening. Sorry, my language. Anyway, so I want to tell you a little bit about what it's like being in Texas right now. So as many of you know, we have been under this SB 8 law since September 1st. SB 8 was a law that we weren't really sure was going to ever go into effect, because I think there was definitely a thought that along the line somewhere, surely a court would stop this thing that is clearly unconstitutional. But now we know that this, we knew this was a long game. We knew this was, slowly put together to attack our right to bodily autonomy, to decide whether we want to parent or not. So in 2012, we were seeing trap laws come into effect. Those were things that were making it really difficult for clinics to stay open. And it has just continued to escalate, and it escalated all the way here to SB 8. So under SB 8, if a person goes into a clinic to get an abortion and they are past a very arbitrary 6-week mark, which is actually only 4 weeks after your period, the providers are basically under the threat of lawsuit in order to prevent them from providing abortions. We know that many people in Texas are still getting abortions. As a person who is volunteering with a local abortion fund, I'm someone who is on the other line, on the other end of these phone calls, these text messages. When people are reaching out to us, letting us know, hey, I went to my clinic and they couldn't help me. What do I do? How do I do this? And so for working class people right now, it is incredibly difficult to be a Texan, a working class Texan, and get an abortion. I will say that it has sort of turned work at the Bridge Collective, which again is a volunteer organization, we're basically mini travel agents. We're working with people who are already parents, who already have kids, to coordinate several days of out-of-state travel that's getting increasingly more expensive the longer the clinic delays. Right. So with the vast number of people in Texas and now in Oklahoma needing to seek abortions outside of their own state, our neighboring state clinics are starting to get backed up. So I'm really just going over this to really help folks understand the impact of what we're dealing with right now and what it's very likely we will see when Roe falls in the summer. So like I mentioned, we've got a lot of folks who are giving us calls, hey, can you help me with gas money? Can you help me with flights? We're often working with many other abortion funds to help meet a single person's need. And we're also running into a lot of impacts of things like immigration issues. For example, Texas is an enormous state. For folks who are living in the Rio Grande Valley, which is in southern Texas, there are border checkpoints 100 miles around. And if you can't safely go through a border checkpoint, how are you supposed to travel out of state to get the abortion that you need? So we've been seeing really, really clearly the impacts of all of these struggles, right? This horrible authoritarian government that we're living in as Texans right now. Greg Abbott is just doing whatever the hell he wants and no one's stopping him. We're seeing, environmental impacts. I'll say, like, we randomly had tornadoes in Austin a few months ago, and I had folks I'm on the phone with folks having to reschedule their flights, reschedule their whole clinic, their whole appointment, because they can't fly while there's tornadoes going on. So there's just really concrete impacts to what is happening on working class people's lives right now. And I just really want to make sure that that is like clear and known. And we know that when Roe falls in the summer, that we're going to have about 23 states who lose abortion access. It's either going to be severely restricted, it's going to be outlawed outright. The people who are currently helping people get abortions are going to be criminalized. These are things that we know. And there are things that we can do to prepare, in addition to the fights that, the greater political fight that we're talking about. And I just want to talk a little bit about these like concrete things for a moment. Things that we can expect to happen. We can expect self-managed abortion, these abortion pills that Jenny has mentioned, as being, these are things that are going to be, that one, we should be sharing more information about really widely. PlanCpills.org is a great place to learn all about abortion pills, how to get them, how to use them, and resources that you should know. Because in some states it is, we're really walking a line of legality here, right? So knowing that there's a medication abortion hotline, knowing there's a reproductive legal defense fund for people who are accused of self-managing their abortion outside of a clinic, right? So knowing that these resources are out there is incredibly important. I will drop a link in the chat when I am done talking. That is a link tree that Austin DSA has put together that has a ton of these really important resources that we would just love people to know that they exist, know that they're out there. I think we're also going to see further restrictions on birth control, on other issues of bodily autonomy. And I think it's really, really important for us as socialists to be out in the streets demonstrating against these as attacks on the working class. I think that Jenny has really gone into that in a really good depth. And I just want to really underline it here because it's really important to me that we understand that these fights are connected, and we should be out very vocally fighting for fighting for Medicare for all, right? Fighting for universal health care, fighting for free childcare, for paid parental leave, right? So all of these different policies are really tenets of reproductive justice, right? In action. You should be able to parent if you want, parent if you don't want to. You should be able to take the time off that you need to care for your children. You should be able to not have to choose between rent and childcare. And that's exactly what we're seeing right now. So I think that taking these fights on as the national organization that we are, especially because I think something that we maybe forget being a national organization is that we have chapters all over the country. We need to be talking to each other. We need to find out, what are you doing? I know the Mutual Aid Working Group is on this, reaching out to chapters to find out, what are you working on? How can we share resources? We've got our toolkit. This stuff is really important. And I think finding ways that we can really work together and work with other groups who are already doing this work is incredibly important. So thinking a little bit more about DSA's role, I think it is incredibly important to support abortion funds. I'm obviously a little biased being a volunteer, but the work of abortion funds, they have been, they're on the front lines, making sure that people are getting the healthcare that they need, and having people show up. For example, this weekend, Austin DSA threw a kit packing party for the Bridge Collective. We folded zines. We had 100 people come out to sticker Plan B and fold zines and learn the difference between Plan B and abortion pills. And all of those people went out and told other people. So I think that sort of presence in our communities is incredibly important, and showing abortion funds that we're here in this fight with them to do work like lobbying, to do work like protesting that is maybe not something that they are as able to do, especially as 501c3 organizations. I think that while we're out protesting, we need to be smart. We need to have strategic tactics Folks need to not talk to the police. I just think that there's a whole lot that we can learn here from other movements. And I think things like, we have like the Red Rabbits and Marshals, and all of those things are incredibly important if we're going to be out there. I know there's a lot of folks wanting to do things like clinic defense and protesting in front of clinics. And I would say check in with the groups who are already doing that stuff. Make sure that your clinic wants you out there. Some do not. It's really, really stressful for the people going in to get healthcare. So these are things that like groups are already doing. But I know that there are things that DSA can be doing that maybe we are, maybe we aren't, and we should start. So things like pressuring your unions to be pushing for resolutions in defense of abortion care. We need local resolutions, city councils, right? That sort of thing to protect abortion. Here in Austin, even though we're in Texas and we've got this awful state government, our local politicians last year, the year before, I'm not sure, passed a resolution protecting, setting aside city funding to help people travel for abortions. They couldn't spend it on the abortion, itself, but they could set money aside because they knew that people are needing to travel more and more, especially with the restrictions that we're seeing. I think that's pretty much where I'm at, y'all. Like, I think that there's a whole lot of there's a huge diversity of tactics that we can be taking. I think you should analyze what is going on in your state and your city, and work with folks on the ground who are already doing this work, and then share that back out with one another. I think the communication that we can be doing around this is really important to strategizing and making sure that we are not only helping people get the care that they need, but also pushing for the policies that we know are going to benefit the working class. So make sure that you are bringing people into this fight. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it back over to Christian. Thanks, y'all.
Thanks so much, Kim. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Super important that we are not only assessing our local conditions, that we're pursuing a variety of tactics, but that we're also sharing it back to folks, because it is not always self-evident, and that there are always opportunities for folks to get involved and join the larger fight, to each their own ability. So thank you so much, Kim. Our next speaker is Shalon Jones from New Iberia, Louisiana. She currently lives in New Orleans, where she is a health coach and doula. With a background in case management, she has worked with a wide range of clients. When she was 18 years old, she began working as a patient care attendant, and her degree in kinesiology with a focus on health promotion was earned at Grambling State University in 2014. In the years since, she has served Pasadena and Houston, Texas, focusing on healthy eating and food sovereignty. She has extensive experience in serving individuals with mental illness and disabilities, and she currently works with parenting families in the New Orleans area and is an MSW student at Baylor University in Waco, Texas. Over to you, Shalon.
Thank you, Kristen, so much. And thank you, DSA, for allowing us to shine the light on this work that we continue to do here in New Orleans, Louisiana. So without further ado, let me, on behalf of Birthmark Doula Collective, I would like to just let you all know what we do as an organization. Birthmark Doula Collective is a birth justice organization that supports, informs, and advocates for pregnant and parenting people in the New Orleans area. We offer doula services, childbirth education, lactation support, and we also have several ongoing advocacy projects. We respect your family's choice, whether you would like to have your baby at home, medicated or naturally, vaginally, or via cesarean. We are committed to families throughout your journey in pregnancy, childbirth, and very first stages of parenthood. Our services are a wide range. So we have birth doulas. For those of you who don't know what a doula is a trained professional that provides non-clinical physical, emotional support during, after, and during labor, after, and before labor. We offer a wide range of services, a postpartum doula, that's after a mom or parenting family does have their baby, lactation support in-home or in the clinic, prenatal and postpartum education. We have classes, group or private. It's just at the discretion of the family. And then we also have nurse advocacy services and student doula programs. So our programs are a wide range of programs, and we also have a breastfeeding support group, and that's located in surrounding areas as well: New Orleans, Opelousas, Lake Charles, and Shreveport. Next slide. Okay, so Birthmark is committed to the justice of mothers and more specifically Black mothers. Maternal health disparities let us know that maternal health is an indicator in the health of a nation. In the United States, the US has some of the worst maternal mortality and severe maternal morbidity rates compared to other developed nations. Louisiana follows the national trend of maternal mortality, similar to the US compared to other countries. A Black woman is four Black women to every white woman dies. Okay, so really allow that to really sit on your mind and think about how, detrimental that is. Louisiana remains #1, and Black women are 4 times more likely to die than white women to experience of pregnancy-related death issues. So we have a wide range of community-based perinatal support programs such as doula services, birth doula or postpartum doula, perinatal health advocacy. This is a comprehensive support for work of the collective. So this allows us to focus on the social determinants of health, such as economic stability, education, health and healthcare, and also the neighborhood the mom lives in or the environment that's around her. Nurse advocacy support, blood pressure monitoring, and we are the liaison. Doulas are the liaison between the medical provider and also the client, and the nurse advocacy is the liaison between the medical provider, doula, and the client. So we have a lot of care coordination going on. We spend a lot of time with mothers. Okay, so you may ask the question, why America's Black mothers and babies are in a life or death crisis? And you got the answer just before I started, just before this slide came up. They're constantly fighting their social determinants of health. We have a lot of factors, but Birthmark Doula Collective here in New Orleans continues to pound the pavement in our community, within our community and surrounding areas. And we can't do this alone, and we don't do it alone. We also have the Mama Policy Health Agenda that allows us to address social determinants of health, and we do this under the Merck of Mothers Safer Childbirth City Initiative. This is in coordination with the Institute of Women and Ethnic Studies and the National Birth Equity Collaborative. We join together to improve maternal health outcomes for Black birthing people here in the city. But in spite of all the initiatives that we continue to work hard and diligently with every day, every year we have our Black Birth Matters virtual conference. So connect with us on social media to save the date. This year is Healing Our Wombs and Wounds. So it's 11 years of service, and we are celebrating our birthday this Saturday, May 14th. So that's something that we are looking forward to. And yeah, we are winning. So if you want to be a part of the solution, continue to support your community-based organizations. And also, you're welcome to support Birthmark Doulas here in New Orleans. We continue to strive to be, help our families, help our moms, one family, one mother at a time. We also like to look forward to just partnering with other community-based initiatives to just spread the word, continue to spread the word. If I can offer some encouragement to DSA or any other organization that's on the call that is fighting for justice in your respective places, I just want you to know that your labor is not in vain. And more importantly, I want you to remember that the maternal health is an indicator of the health of a nation. And we know that when the pulse is weak, that's either a sign that there's a medical emergency. So it is a state of emergency with Black and Brown families in Louisiana, and we want you to just keep that at the forefront of your mind. DSA, thank you so much for giving Birthmark Doulas the opportunity to shine the light on this important work. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for all that you're doing. Again, we're not going to be able to fight this fight alone, and we're not going to be able to do that without extensive networks of care as we go hit the streets and broaden this movement and the momentum towards justice. So next up, I'm going to introduce Abby Solomon. She's a family medicine resident in Boston, focusing on reproductive health care, and serves as a union delegate for the Committee of Interns and Residents. She's also a member of the Healthcare Workers Collective, a part of DSA's Labor Commission. So over to you, Abby.
Thanks, Christian. Hi, everyone. My name's Abby Solomon. I'm calling you from Boston, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my experience in becoming an abortion provider. I went to medical school in New Orleans, so I was really excited to hear from Shalon about the work Birthmark Doulas is doing. They're awesome. In New Orleans, there's only one really small abortion clinic. There's only 3 clinics in the whole state of Louisiana. And I was able to spend one day shadowing the doctor there. And I was really shocked at the low quality care that had to be given in order to meet the patient demand. You know, there's so many patients in the waiting room. The doctor has to go as quickly as possible in order to see everyone. And abortion is such a time-sensitive procedure that we need to get it done on that day at whatever sacrifice. Also during medical school, they taught us about miscarriage management, but not as much about abortion, medication, and procedural, and even less shadowing opportunities were available. So I was in this club called Medical Students for Choice, where our main goal was to fill these gaps in our curriculum. And it was really cool to sort of foster a whole class of doctors that really cared about reproductive justice going forward. A major reason for the inaccessibility of abortion in Louisiana is that there's simply not enough willing providers. So I left New Orleans with the determination that I would become an abortion provider and help with this demand. That's why I decided to do my residency in Massachusetts, where I felt I could more easily obtain this training. And I know that being an abortion provider comes with some personal risks, but I know how important it is to be loud about this issue and normalize it as a regular part of healthcare. So when I was interviewing for my medical residency, I was really looking for somewhere with a union because I wanted to have protection over my hours, and I wanted to make sure that I and my fellow residents were treated with respect. So I got involved with CIR, the Committee of Interns and Residents, my union. And it's been a great outlet for my advocacy during residency. This year we got ourselves a raise, and we got guaranteed mental health care in our contract. But it also means that when big news comes out, like last week, the Roe v. Wade leaked decision, we could really spring into action immediately. We had residents going to the flash protests happening that day. We started working on resolutions to codify our support for protections for abortions. We have a group chat of union members all over the country ready to spring into action. And it's cool to be with a group of physicians that understand how powerful our voice can be together. So the reason I'm talking about my union so much on this call is because in other countries, the right to have an abortion was won with a powerful trade union movement, like in Ireland in 2017. Unions that are comprised of healthcare workers are uniquely positioned to take up human rights issues and make them workplace issues. This is true of my union, this is true of nurses unions, all healthcare worker unions. So I ask that you organize your healthcare worker workplace. You can get involved with other socialist healthcare workers. I can drop the link in the chat for the DSA Healthcare Workers Collective. And then finally, a plug for Medicare for All. This past year, my union adopted a resolution supporting Medicare for All. As healthcare workers, we see every day how the private insurance in our country harms patients. Today, Bernie Sanders introduced a new Medicare for All bill and held the first ever Senate hearing on Medicare for All. This is a really exciting moment. And as we know, abortion on demand, the whole point of this call, it's not possible unless everyone has access to this healthcare. So if you're in a union, get your union to fight for Medicare for All and abortion on demand. And if you're a DSA member, join our Medicare for All efforts in DSA. Thank you so much. I'll drop those links in the chat. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Abby. Absolutely. And we have some great resources in the toolkit. Before I introduce our final speaker, I just want to briefly go over our next steps, especially if you were just recently joined the call. One, get in the streets this weekend. If you're able to, turn your chapter out to a Ban Off Your Bodies rally this weekend, or if there are other efforts, local reproductive justice, community or union allies to organize an event. Print some signs, send us pictures, use the toolkit to prep. We'll have resources there. Second, you can call your lapsed and expired members and ask them to join you at a rally, turn them out, use the dialer as part of the recommitment drive. Again, we're incentivizing chapters with high percentage of recommitted lapsed members with weekly prizes, which is great. I mean, a nice little silver lining to doing this work. But again, we want to make sure that we're turning people out, we're giving people an opportunity to get involved and making the choice to join the fight. And then, of course, show up and follow up. You can use the street canvassing and onboarding guides to have conversations with anyone attending, get them to sign the pledge, do so safely, of course, and keep them plugged into this fight. We are sharing this toolkit again in the chat, which is geared towards mobilization at the moment, because that is the best way DSA can show up and raise public pressure in this fight. But more resources and updates to the guide will be continuously added, as well as training opportunities. I can't say it enough. We need a public political fight, and DSA must and can work towards that movement alongside so many other organizations, so many other people who are ready to throw down and become ungovernable. That said, I'm going to introduce our final speaker, always a pleasure. Assemblymember Phara Souffrant Forrest represents the 57th Assembly District in Brooklyn, which consists of the neighborhoods of Fort Greene and Clinton Hill, as well as parts of Bed-Stuy, Prospect Heights, and Crown Heights. Prior to her election, Phara worked as a maternal health nurse and organized tenants in the neighborhoods that she now represents. So without further ado, over to you, Phara.
Unmute myself. Hi, everyone. I hope everyone is having a wonderful evening. I am truly excited to follow all of the great speakers on this phone call, because in essence, it really behooves all of us. It is very important for all of us to get involved in any way possible to make sure that we defend our rights to live the life that we want. So as Kristen said, I am an assembly member in Brooklyn, representing the best parts of Brooklyn. I don't know if you're from Brooklyn, it's New York, Fort Greene, Park, Pleasant Hill, Prospect Heights. But I represent a very diverse neighborhood, a neighborhood that really has been through some, when we think about the Crown Heights riots, when we talk about poverty and just the change in the gentrification. But one thing that has always remained, though, is that this idea that we can't go back. Like, progressive ideals are the ideals of everyone, that we have to find a way to move forward. And whether that means, we can argue about housing, we can argue about a lot of things, but the body has to be protected. And so when I ran, one second. I'm sorry, I also have a 1-year-old that I have to play canticos for, or he will go crazy. But I know, but really looking at just figuring out a way for us to move forward together. And so when I ran on the platform of healthcare, housing, and this idea that, we want a government that embraces the working class people by not only providing space for them to be in office, but also provide a space for bills, for policies that support the working class people. So all that to say, it is crazy to me to be in this place where I have to talk about abortions in Albany. Like I have to talk about that abortions are healthcare. It breaks my heart when I read things like, oh, you know, it's okay that women in Texas can't have abortions. I mean, we have pills that they can order online. Okay, from a nursing point, because I'm a nurse, from a nursing point, that is insane. That is someone's going to take pills to force them to bleed, and then that is supposed to be an unsupervised activity. I need someone to hold my hand during a period, much less an abortion. This is crazy. This is where we've gotten to. These are the options that women or people with cervixes, people with uteruses have. That is insane. And so when we hear that there is a ban on abortions, or this idea that abortions become illegal, fuck that. My uterus is not illegal. It has to be supported. It has to be loved. It has to be nurtured. And if I have to be the one assemblywoman that has to like throw a tampon in somebody's face, I will do that. Okay, sorry. I'm sorry. My niece is on the side, like, calm down, Phara. I'm sorry. So that being after my little passionate moment, that being said, it really is important for us to understand the attack. It is an attack on working class women. It is an attack on Black women. It is an attack on the idea of us, and an attack on the family. The idea that a man has the right to speak over a woman, the right that a person who's outside of the family can now make decisions for this family. I really support any effort in New York State. We are working on the, oh gosh, forgive me because I do not remember the name of the bill, but it's basically to do a constitutional change to make sure that whatever happens with the Supreme Court and whatever decisions that they make, that in New York, we stand strong for women's rights. We stand strong for abortion rights. When I find out the number, I'll drop it in the box. But today is a long day. It is now 9:22, and I will return the spotlight to Christian. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak on this very important issue.
Thank you so much, Phara. Always a pleasure. Again, can't wait to come by to New York and give some love to your wonderful, wonderful child. But again, that's the end of our call. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us tonight. There is so much to do. We'll be dropping the links in the chat. But no doubt, please do not doubt that we can get it done together. We will see you on the streets. Let's make sure as we're facing this moment that we show each other care, but make sure that we're also giving them hell. Solidarity, everyone. Have a good night.